Good morning. We have some guests among us this morning, and we sure want you to know how happy we are to have you in our presence. All of us find ourselves in different places in our walk with the Lord, and we certainly want your experience among us to be one that helps you with that complements what you're already trying to do in your walk with Him, and that certainly does nothing to deter it. Next year, we as a people are planning to invest a year getting to know Jesus better, walking with Him, meditating on His life, thinking about our following Him. And so we're going to invest a year in the Gospels, studying more, learning more about His life, and really getting to know Him as well as we can, both as a congregation and individually. I say that to you just so that you know that we really are people that want to know the heart of Jesus, that really want to imitate Him, to really know as much about Him as we can, and to really shine Him into the lives of other people. And so I just want you to know how serious we are about that, and how we'd like to help you in your own walk, and at the same time be helped, because there are things that you can certainly teach us, show us, model for us in your own effort to walk with Him too. In fact, I want to spend a little time talking about one of the stories that Jesus told in Luke chapter 15 when He was describing the kind of relationship that the Father would like to have with us as His children, as His sons. He told this story because people were critical of the kind of company that Jesus was keeping. He was dining with publicans and sinners, and people were critical of the kind of company that He was keeping. And so He told them a story in order to talk to them about the kind of heart that the Father has, the kind of way that we can behave in response to the Father's heart. And there's really two ways that He describes. We're going to look at a father and his two sons, and how both of them were loved by their father, and how both of them reacted to their father's love and their father's grace in different ways. And I want to suggest that all of us will find ourselves somewhere in this story. You will see yourself somewhere in the relationship of one of these boys with their father, and we'll see something about the kind of relationship that the Father wants to happen in our experience in His house. And so in Luke chapter 15, if you'll read together with me, beginning in verse 11 of that text, Jesus says the following: "A certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me.' And so he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his estate with loose living. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be in need. And he went and attached himself to one of the citizens of that country, and that citizen sent him into his fields to feed the swine. And he was longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. Well, when he had come to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, and I'm dying here with hunger? I will get up and I'll go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men.' And so he got up and he came to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and he felt compassion for him. And he ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this son of mine was dead, and he's come to life again. And he was lost, and has been found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard the music and he heard the dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things might be. And so the servant said to him, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he received him back safe and sound." But the brother became angry and was not willing to go in. And so his father came out and began entreating him. But he answered and said to his father, "Look, for so many years I've been serving you, and I've never neglected a command of yours, and yet you've never given me a kid that I might be married with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who's devoured your wealth with harlots, you killed the fattened calf for him." And the father said to him, "My child, you've always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to be merry and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and he was lost and has been found." The thing that I want you to see in this story is the story of a father's love, not for one son, but for two sons. And how both of them had something to learn about their father's love and about their own response to their father's love. First, I want you to think some about the younger boy. Some of you have been here. Some of you have been where he was. You've lived where he went. I have. And what the younger son teaches us is that there are many roads to the far country. There are lots of ways to get on the path to the place where he ended up. In fact, you can catch the train right after services today. You can go out here to the crossing, and you can get on the train, and it will take you to the far country. And you can go to a place where there's plenty of lights, and you can go to a place where there's plenty of fun. You can go to a city where people never sleep, and you can stay up all night, and you can find all kinds of fun. There will be all kinds of neon, and there will be plenty to drink, and there will be plenty to eat. And you'll have all kinds of companions. Lots of folks will sit at your table, and they'll drink with you, and they'll dine with you, and they will tell stories that will make you laugh from your belly. I mean, that will be so funny. And you can go and you can watch things that will entertain you and that will make you clap and that will fill you full of joy and of pleasure, and you can lose yourself in so many things in the far country. You can dress in the finest kinds of clothes, and you can drive the finest kind of cars, and you can have the biggest sort of house. And you can, or if you want to lose yourself and travel, there are so many places that you can go, so many far countries that you can go and see. And there's so much indulgence that you can lose yourself in things that give you pleasure, and things that give you honor, and things that give you fame, and things that give you lots of friends. But here is the outcome for everyone that goes away to the far country. There are lots of roads there, and there will be many distractions that will greet you in the far country. But every single one of them, hear me, every single one of them will leave you bankrupt in the end. Even if you've got money in your pocket. Even if you're not feeding pigs when it's all over with. Even if you don't have all your friends abandon you. Even if you haven't lost everything to alcohol. Even if you haven't ended up in a corner withdrawing from something. Even if you don't end up in a picture that looks bad, what you'll find is you just got nothing. You've just filled your life full of things that are frivolous and empty and that have no future. That's just full of folly. You know, we talk about wisdom, and the wisdom is is the domain where wise things dwell. It's wise thinking, wise behavior, wise pursuits. And God is in back of all. God is behind all wisdom. It's what makes it work. It's what makes it work. But there's another land that you can go to that's just as real as the land of wisdom. And that land's called fooldom. And it's a real place. And the people that dwell there are happy. And it looks like there's life. And it looks like there's glitz and there's glamour. But it's a hollow life, a life in fooldom. And that's what the little brother found out. He went and he spent everything he had, every penny his dad gave him. And when everything was spent and he had nothing, he saw the emptiness of what he was running after, the dream he was chasing. There was no dream at all. That was just fooldom. It was just foolishness. And so he came home with nothing. Now there are lots of roads to that land, but they all will leave you in the same place. They'll all leave you bankrupt. That's the story, at least the beginning of the story, of the little brother. The older brother has a story too. He stayed at home. He stayed with his dad. He ate at his daddy's table. He enjoyed his daddy's wealth. He enjoyed the comfort and the safety of his father's home. He had all of that experience. But you know, there's another tragedy that can befall those who don't make a venture into the far country the way that the little brother did. And that tragedy is this, and it was one of the tragedies that Jesus was addressing to those who were critical of His keeping company with little brothers who had run away from home, with little brothers who had experimented in the far country. And so part of the story is intended to shine a light on what had happened to them. And what had happened to them was this. Much time in the Father's house and in the Father's employment, if you've been a good person, can do this to you. It can leave you proud and self-righteous. And ironically, as far from the Father as the prodigal. Do you see that? Big brother did stay at home. But Big Brother didn't appreciate the Father's heart and the Father's love and the Father's care any more than Little Brother. In fact, Big Brother thought that because he was the good son and not the reckless son, that somehow the Father owed him something more. That somehow he deserved something from the Father. And so when he says in verse 28, when he speaks of himself, he's angry at his dad and the fact that the father would have any kind of heart for the little brother. And so he became angry and was not willing to go in. He stays outside and he pouts while everyone's inside and celebrating with the little brother. And his father comes out and he entreats him to come in, and he won't. And he answers his father's kindness and his father's entreaty, his father's beckoning for him to come in with these words, "Look, for so many years I've been serving you." As if that was his burden, having to serve his dad. "And I've never neglected a command of yours." I expect that that's a little overstatement, wouldn't you? I mean, there's some good sons and there's some good daughters, but not that good. "I've never neglected," he says, "a command of yours. And yet you've never given me a kid. You've never threw a party for me and my friends. And yet you do for the little brother that's come home." And so Jesus intends, in painting the picture of the older brother, to scold those who look at the company that he's keeping with some critique and with some criticism. Because the reality is about Jesus' Father, and the reality is about the Father's heart and the Father's love is this. The Father loves both of His sons. Both of His sons. The one that left, and He loves the one at home. He loves the prodigal. And here's the evidence of His love. The Father loves the prodigal enough to let him go and live with the swine. Do you know that? If you want to go away to the far country, if you want to experiment with getting on the train or getting on the late night bus or getting in your car and just taking off and going and flirting with all of the pleasures and sins and immorality of the world, you know what the Father will do? He'll let you go. He loves you enough that He'll let you go and see what's in all of that. And He will let you suffer the consequences of that foolish choice. He'll let you spend it all. He'll let you get addicted. He'll let you fall in love with someone who doesn't love your soul. He will let you have the wrong kinds of friends. He'll let you make all of those kinds of choices. And the reason He lets you experience not just the pursuit of those things, but to reap the folly of all of that, is so that maybe you'll see that life in the far country, life out of His house, really isn't all that you thought it would be. That there's a lot of emptiness there and there's a lot of sorrow there, and that maybe when you're done with all of that, you'll see, you know, it was a lot better in Dad's house. It was a lot better at home with Him than it is out here eating slop. Because that's what it'll come to. One day you'll wake up and you'll look in the mirror and you'll think, what is that on my face? And you'll find out that you've been eating with the pigs, that you've been eating at the slop trough, and that it was no good. The Father loves us enough that He'll let us do that. But He loves us enough as well that not only will He let us go and live with the swine, the Father loves the prodigal enough that He watches for his return. The fact that He sees His boy coming down the road is an indication that He was looking for him, is it not? And so the text tells us in verse 31, I'm sorry, not verse 31, in verse 20, the text tells us that he got up and he came to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. You know, if Jennifer was, 300 yards away, further than that, I would know her just by the way she walks. And you know that about the people that you know well, that you love, right? You see them a long way, and you know their gait, you know how they walk. Whether they're coming to you or they're going away, or if they're walking across, you know the way they walk. And the Father is coming out and He's been looking, and it doesn't matter that all of His clothes have holes in them now. It doesn't matter that He's got all of the dung and all of the slop of being in the pen with the hogs, that He's got it all over Him. He sees him, and even though he's downtrodden, the Father knows the walk of His Son, and He recognizes it. And so he loves him enough that He keeps watch for his return. And could I say to you that that's the Father's composure. That's His inclination toward you. Is that if you've been on the train to that far land, the Father's looking for when you come back. And He's waiting for your return anxiously. Because that's the kind of heart that the Father has. That's the nature of His love. He also loves the prodigal enough to restore him to the station that he abandoned. I love the things that the Son said to Himself because before He gets to the Father, because it shows that the Son has really changed. He thinks to himself as he's slopping the hogs, if I was a servant in my daddy's house, I'd eat better than I'm eating right now. And so he begins to rehearse the speech that he's going to give to his dad. He's not going to go back and say, Dad, you ought to make me you ought to put me back in the house again. He's going to go and he's going to ask his dad for a job, is what he's going to do. And I just want you to see how he's been humbled, as Brandon said that we needed to sing about and think about as we got ready for the supper. He's been humbled by his life in the far country. So that he's coming back to his father not with any kind of expectation of being restored. He's coming back to ask his dad for a job so he can work and live just like his dad's servants do. But when he comes to his father, he begins the speech that he's been rehearsing in his mind. And so he says to his dad in verse, he intends to say, Father, I've sinned against heaven in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men. That's what he intends to say. But look what happens when he actually comes into contact with his father. He says in verse 21, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. He says, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Two things happen. One is that when he's actually face to face with his father, he's too humble to even ask his dad for a job. The thing that he confesses to his dad is that I'm not worthy at all to be called your son anymore. But maybe it's also that his father cuts him off before he finishes. And his dad grabs him and he says to the slaves, bring out the best robe and put it on my boy. And you put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and let's kill the fatted calf. For the son of mine was dead, and now he's come to life again. He was lost, and now he's found, because his heart has changed. And so he welcomes him home. The father loves his son enough to give him a post, to give him a place, to give him a residence in his house again that the son himself wouldn't even ask for, because he recognizes his sin. But the father doesn't just love the prodigal son, he also loves the proud son too. He loves the proud son enough to protect him from the sorrows of the far country. You know, I need to appreciate how living by the Father's wisdom, by following the rules of the Father's house, by being close to the Father and enjoying the things that are in the Father's house, how that protects me from so many sorrows that are in the world. And the older son didn't see that. He just saw what his little brother got away with. And there may be a little bit of jealousy on his part. I sure would have liked to have gone to the far country, but I didn't do it. I stayed here. I followed the rules, and look what it got me. But the fact is that the father protected him all those years that he stayed there from all of the sorrows that his little brother experienced. The father loved him enough too to lavish him with his company and with his gifts. There's no cognizance on the older brother's part. There's no appreciation for what it really means to be in a relationship with the Father. To meditate on the great gifts that we enjoy. Our Father has a big house, and we live in this big house, and we enjoy all these gifts and blessings that are all expressions of the Father's love. And he's living in that luxury every day of knowing the goodness of God and the goodness of his Father. And yet not seeing that all of that is an expression of his Father's love. But the Father also loves him enough to teach him that he must love his brother more than himself if he wants to live in his Father's house. Big brother's got to get over himself. He's got to get over his pride. And he's got to get over his self-righteousness. Because if he's really going to live in his Father's house and get what it means to be close to his Father, he's got to love his little brother the way that his father did. And welcome him back, this brother that was lost. As the older brother speaks to this father, he distances himself from his little brother. Notice the way he describes his brother when he talks to his dad. He says to him, verse 29, "For so many years I've been serving you, and I've never neglected a commandment of yours." Verse 30, "But when this son of yours comes, who's devoured your wealth with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him, this son of yours." But look what the father says to him. Verse 32. "We had to be merry and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and was lost and has been found." The older brother needed to see this was his brother and treat him as a brother, welcome him as a brother, love him as a brother. Because he was dead and now he's alive. He was lost and now he's found. Now he's come home. I hope that one of the things that we learn in the course of the coming year is more and more to have the Father's heart. To love. This is a loving church. I know that we love each other. Let's love more. And let's love those that don't know the Father's love more. Let's show them the heart that He has to welcome them home, to bring them back, to come into the porch, to come out of the hog slop, to get out of the pen, to come into the house. And let's watch the Spirit that would cause us to not welcome them with an embrace. To not want to say, let's bring out the robe and the ring and let's kill the calf. Let's have a celebration. Because our brother or our sister, it's been away in the far country, like some of us have been, has come back. And he's home and she's home. And heaven is celebrating. And we're celebrating along with them. Because our son, our brother, our sister has come back again. My Father has a big house. I mean a big house. And it is full of nothing but good things. Everything in my Father's house is good. There's nothing bad here. All kinds of bad stuff in the far country. Nothing bad in my Father's house. And my Father not only has a big house, He's got a big hand. And when you come to the Father, He has things to fill your life with. He has a robe for those that live in His house. And He has a ring for you to wear. And He has sandals for your feet. And so if you come to my Father naked, my Father is going to make you rich. And He's going to make your life full. I don't mean rich in cheap material terms. I mean He's going to fill your life with things that have real meaning. The greatest of which is that you'll eat from His table and you'll be by His side and you'll sleep in His house and you'll know the rest and the peace of my Father who has a big house and who has a big hand. But more than the big house and the big hand that my Father has a big heart. He has a great big heart. And when you run from Him, He cries. And when you're gone away, He watches. Because He wants to welcome you home to His big house where He can bless you with His big hand and love you with His big heart. That's my Father. And He wants me to have a heart just like His. And part of the story and part of the plan of our walk here is for Him to teach us that kind of heart. So that when we grow up, we'll look just like He does. Love just like He does. And not be jealous at all of any of the things that He's given us that are our possessions in Christ, but be things that we want the world to embrace, others to know and to love and to have, and to rejoice in the same way that we do. So, where are you in the story? Little brother? If you're a little brother this morning, come back. Come home. Don't stay out there. It ain't good what you're eating. It's not good what you're doing. There's no future in it. Come home. And if you're a big brother, get humble. See how what we have is so precious. Don't be jealous of it. Want it, share it. Welcome little brother home. Learn the heart of the Father. See His grace for you. If you have a need to come to the Father this morning, if we can help you, our big brother is not like the big brother in the story. Our big brother is Jesus. And He has a heart just like the Father. He welcomes us. In fact, our big brother died for us to bring us home. Isn't that something? The family that we have? Won't you come and be a part of God's family? Won't you come and be a part of His, partaker of His love? Won't you come to Jesus this morning as together we stand and as we sing?